My brother convinced our parents to sell the company. She's a woman. She can't handle it. But he was the one who couldn't handle it. Your mother and I have been thinking a lot about the future. My dad began, his voice deliberately neutral as we gathered at my parents' house for what seemed like an ordinary Sunday dinner. We're getting older, and running a company of this size is becoming increasingly challenging. My mom nodded, her eyes carefully avoiding mine. We want to enjoy life more, travel, maybe meet some grandchildren soon, she added, glancing meaningfully at my brother Evan and his fiancée. So, my dad continued, after much thought, we've decided to accept an offer to sell Montgomery Construction to Reynolds Enterprises. Jonathan Reynolds is offering a very fair price, and the deal includes keeping all current employees for at least 2 years. The air left my lungs as if I had been punched. Montgomery Construction wasn't just a company. It was our family legacy, something I had dedicated my entire adult life to, learning the business literally from the ground up. How long has this been in the works? I asked, my voice much calmer than I felt inside. We've been exploring options for a few months. My father answered vaguely, studying his wineglass instead of meeting my eyes. And why wasn't I included in these discussions? I'm part of the management team. More than that, I'm your daughter. An uncomfortable silence filled the room. It was Evan, my brother, 4 years older, who finally spoke up, his tone condescending though poorly masked as concern. Rachel, be realistic, he said, adjusting the cuffs of his expensive shirt. You're an excellent project manager, but running a company of this size? That's a whole different world. Clients in this industry expect to deal with. Well, you know. No, Evan, I don't know, I replied, feeling anger rise within me. Why, don't you enlighten me? He sighed, as if explaining something obvious to a child. It's a male-dominated industry, Rachel. Our biggest clients are traditional builders and developers who expect to shake hands with another man to close deals. It's just the way it is. The truth behind it all finally surfaced when Evan added, with thinly veiled satisfaction, the money from the sale will stay in the family. It's life-changing money. I've already spoken to Dad. I'll be getting an executive position at Reynolds as part of the deal. You can have a position too if you want. Or you can just take your share and finally do something more suitable for you. In that moment, a cold clarity replaced my initial shock. They weren't just selling the company, they were selling my future. All because my brother had convinced our parents that a woman couldn't lead a construction company. What none of them could imagine was that this underestimation would be their biggest mistake. And how, in just a few months, everything would turn around in ways that would forever change our family and our legacy. I grew up among steel beams and architectural blueprints. Montgomery Construction was founded by my father, George, 40 years ago, starting as a small operation that he and my mother, Helen, built from scratch in Columbus, Ohio. Over the decades, they turned it into one of the most respected construction firms in the Midwest, specializing in medium-sized commercial projects. While other girls my age were getting dolls and toy houses, I was begging for miniature construction equipment. By the time I was 6, I had my own yellow hard hat, which I wore proudly during weekend visits to construction sites. She has my dad used to say to his employees as I curiously studied the structures going up, the same look I had when I started. My brother Evan, on the other hand, saw these visits as boring obligations. Can't we just go to lunch already? He would whisper, kicking rocks around the site while our dad explained the importance of proper foundations or how to read structural blueprints. That difference between us only grew over time. During my teenage years, I spent every summer working in different departments of the company, from customer service to accounting, from project management to construction sites. I wanted to learn every part of the business, to understand how each piece fit into the whole. You don't have to do this, sweetheart, my mom would often say. Your father built this company to give you and your brother different opportunities, not so you'd have to work as hard as he did. But I loved the work. I loved the smell of freshly cut wood and wet concrete. I loved the moment when a project turned from lines on a blueprint into something real, something that would stand for decades. When it was time to choose a college, I picked business administration with a concentration in construction management. Surprisingly, my dad tried to talk me out of it. "Rachel, maybe you should consider something less demanding," he suggested over dinner. "Construction management is a tough field, especially for women?" I finished the sentence he left hanging. "That's exactly why I need to do it." Reluctantly, he ended up supporting my decision. Evan, meanwhile, followed the path everyone expected from the male heir. He graduated in business administration, but spent more time building social connections than actually learning about the business. Still, he was the one my dad introduced to important clients as the future of Montgomery construction. After graduating with honors and completing my MBA focused on construction management and sustainable development, I returned to the family business determined to prove my worth. I was placed as a project manager, a role in which I thrived, despite the initial doubts of some more traditional clients and suppliers. A woman project manager? That's a first. One contractor remarked on my first major project. His attitude changed quickly when I solved a complex scheduling issue that had delayed the project for weeks. For 5 years, I led some of the company's most successful and innovative projects, including our first LEED Platinum-certified building, a significant milestone that brought us recognition and new clients. Evan, meanwhile, held the title of Vice President of Business Development, an impressive title that masked his limited responsibilities. He represented the company at luncheons, social events, and golf tournaments, while I worked 60-hour weeks ensuring that projects were completed on time and within budget. My brother is the public face of the company, and I'm its engine. I once explained to Sofia Rodriguez, my best friend since college, somehow I've always accepted that dynamic. "The question is," she replied insightfully, "how long is that dynamic going to work once your dad decides to retire?" I didn't have to wait long for the answer. When my dad turned 65, things started to shift subtly. During his birthday party, he casually mentioned that he was starting to think about succession. Every eye in the room immediately turned to Evan, who smiled with that confidence I've never been able to tell if it's genuine or just a mask. In the weeks that followed, I noticed changes in the office dynamic. Evan started joining more management meetings. My dad spent hours behind closed doors with him, going over the company's financials, conversations I was never invited to. Despite my proven track record of managing multi-million-dollar project budgets, it was then that I started noticing visitors at the office. Men in suits who were quickly ushered into the conference room with my dad and Evan. When I asked our receptionist about them, she casually mentioned that they were representatives from larger companies, including Reynolds Enterprises, a much bigger construction company with operations nationwide. The confirmation came from Alicia Baker, an operations manager who had worked with us for nearly 20 years. "Rachel," she called me over to her desk one day, closing the door to ensure privacy. "I think you should know. There are rumors that your dad is considering selling the company. The guys in accounting are putting together all kinds of financial reports for potential investors." My stomach dropped. Selling Montgomery Construction? The legacy of our family? The business that had been at the center of our lives for 4 decades? And why was I, the person who had dedicated my entire professional life to this company, being kept in the dark? The answer, as I would learn during that fateful Sunday dinner, was as simple as it was devastating. She's a woman. She can't handle it. I left my parents' house that night with my mind spinning and my heart heavy. The drive back to my apartment was a blur, my thoughts a storm of anger, hurt, and disbelief. Montgomery Construction wasn't just a business. To me, it was the place where I grew up, where I found my purpose, where I had planned to build my future. When I got to my apartment, instead of breaking down in tears like part of me wanted to, I made 2 phone calls, one to Marcus Chen, my childhood friend who was now a successful corporate lawyer, and another to Sofia Rodriguez, my best friend, and a marketing executive. We need to talk, I told both of them. I have less than a week to save my family's company. The next morning, we turned my apartment into an impromptu war room. Marcus arrived with his laptop and stacks of legal documents. Sophia showed up with a giant whiteboard and colorful markers. We spent the entire day breaking down every aspect of the situation. Let's look at the facts objectively, Marcus began, his glasses reflecting the light as he organized papers across my dining table. The sale hasn't been finalized yet, right? According to my dad, the signing is scheduled for Friday, I replied. Apparently, everything's already set. 5 days, Sophia wrote on the whiteboard. It's not much time, but I've seen marketing campaigns launched in less. Marketing? I questioned. This isn't exactly a PR problem, Sophia. She smiled. That sharp, knowing smile that always meant she saw something others didn't. Actually, it's exactly that. Your brother sold a narrative to your parents, that a woman can't run a construction company. What we need is a more powerful counter-narrative. Our first move was a deep dive into the real financial situation of Montgomery Construction. Thanks to my years as a project manager, I had access to data that Evan, with his role more focused on public relations, never saw. What we uncovered was eye-opening. Although the company was healthy, the projects I led accounted not for 40%, but nearly 60% of the current revenue. This is incredible, Rachel. Marcus whistled quietly, studying the numbers. Your department isn't just profitable, it's what's keeping the company competitive. On top of that, the sustainable projects I had pioneered were generating the highest profit margins and attracting a new type of client, more progressive, younger, and significantly less concerned about the gender of the person they were doing business with. Basically, Sophia concluded after reviewing the data. Your brother is selling the company right when it's about to enter its most profitable segment, thanks to you. Marcus, meanwhile, was investigating the legal details of the upcoming sale. After making a few discreet calls to contacts in the legal community, he uncovered something crucial. I found something interesting, he said, putting away his phone. Reynolds' offer is conditional on keeping at least 85% of the current project management team for a minimum of 2 years. What exactly does that mean? I asked. It means that if you and your team leave, the company's value will drop dramatically, he explained with a meaningful smile. Reynolds isn't just buying physical assets or the Montgomery name, he's buying operational expertise, which is mainly you and the people you've trained. This revelation became the catalyst for our plan. I needed to know how far my team would go with me if necessary. Over the next 48 hours, I had carefully crafted conversations with my most loyal project managers and several key clients with whom I had built strong relationships over the years. The response was almost unanimously in my favor. Most of my team expressed shock over the sale and hesitation about working under new leadership. Several clients were visibly upset to hear that I might no longer be overseeing their projects. Rachel, we built this community center with you because we trust your vision, said one important client, the director of a nonprofit foundation. If you leave, well, we would have to reconsider future projects. Meanwhile, Sophia worked on developing a detailed presentation showing the company's financial trajectory under my leadership versus the results of departments led by Evan. The contrast was striking. Numbers don't lie, she remarked as we finalized the slides. This is powerful. Marcus handled the legal aspects, preparing documents for various possible scenarios. The deal hasn't been signed yet, he reminded us. We can still change the course of this. On Thursday night, the eve of the scheduled signing, our plan was complete. I was exhausted, anxious, but resolute. Are you sure this could work? I asked my friends, glancing at the organized chaos of documents, charts, and spreadsheets scattered all over my apartment. Sophia squeezed my hand. It's not guaranteed, but you have a strong case, And honestly, they've underestimated you so completely that the element of surprise is totally on your side. Marcus nodded. Plus, you have something your brother never had: genuine respect from the people who actually do the work. In the end, that's worth more than any country club connection. That night, I went over our strategy one last time before trying to sleep. The hardest part wouldn't be confronting Jonathan Reynolds or even my brother. It would be facing my parents, especially my father. The man who had taught me everything about construction, who had unknowingly planted in me a love for the business, but who, in the end, couldn't see me as his true successor. Tomorrow, I whispered to myself as I finally drifted off to sleep. Everything changes.